Hey everyone, Pastor George here with Mailbag Fridays, and I am taking another question from Bill Heller. And this week it is pretty timely because the season's almost upon us, so it was a good question. And the question is, how should Christians celebrate Christmas? Is it okay to lie to our kids about Santa Claus? He says his kids are now teenagers, so it's a bit late for us, but I always wondered. So that's a really good question, and this is actually something that a lot of people kind of. Uh, get confused about, or there's a lot of different opinion on this type of thing. So firstly, how should Christians celebrate Christmas? um, I'll deal with that, and then I'll deal with the Santa one after that. So as far as this is concerned, I think, and I guess the Santa one is really attached to it, is like, what is the primary focus of the Christmas season in your house, right? And I think that if the way it should be for Christians is that the primary focus should always be on the Advent story and who Jesus is, right? That has to be the primary focus. And I'm not a parent, and so I can't speak with any sort of experience in this area other than being, a child who grew up in a culture of this battle between the secular Christmas, which is becoming extremely popular and it has been for a very long time, and the Christian Christmas, which has largely been forgotten, but not completely, right? And so the culture is going to keep pushing and saying, no, Santa Claus is the most important. It's all about the joy. It's all about all this other stuff. And the Christians can agree with some of these things, but we have to keep our focus on Jesus. And I think that can become difficult, especially when the kids are young, and they're excited to get presents, and they go to school with other people who aren't Christian, and they're all talking about Santa Claus and getting presents and things like that. And I can understand how it's very difficult to keep that balance. One of the traditions in my family that I really liked is that we have a Advent tree thing where each day we were to put up a new ornament on this little tree that my mom bought. And we also did the Advent calendar things with the chocolates. So it was always a part of it. It was always a part of the celebration. And I can't say that it was always successful in keeping my brother and I focused on Jesus instead of presents, but at least it was there, and it was an important part of the season for us, right? And I can so that should really be how Christians should celebrate Christmas, right? We should always have a focus on it. I would say that if that going to church service on Christmas is extremely important if it ever happens to fall on that day, and reminding people that your family, at least your children, that the main focus isn't on the presents, and the presents have a meaning, because it's about gifts to each other. And what's the greatest gift? The greatest gift God gave to us was His Son, right? So again, that's very bland answer. I know that's probably what you hear every series on Christmas, but that really is something. The reason it's so bland, the reason you hear it all the time, is because it's something that we always need to work on, because it's really difficult to be out there in a culture that continually pushes us to just do the Santa Claus stuff, and not focus on the religious aspects behind it. As for the part about Santa Claus, this one is actually really interesting, because there's lots of different ways you can take this, and it generally comes down to what counts as a lie, what's the purpose behind the lie. It's all very, very complicated. So there are some people like John Piper, for instance, who will tell you that if you tell your kids about Santa Claus, you are sinning because you're lying to them, because kids are going to understand this as real, right? I mean, I know, at least when I was very young, I certainly believed Santa Claus was 100% real. And when you're misleading them about the truth, that's lying to them, right? And he'll point to passages in Colossians that tells us not to lie to one another. And I think that's a pretty good argument. But on the other hand, I do think that there's also a strain in Christian thought where it's like, what is the actual purpose of the lie itself? Is the purpose of the lie to do what most lies do, which is to conceal the truth, to mislead, to misdirect people away for selfish gain and ambition? And I think that is where it gets a little bit more complicated. To remove this outside of Santa Claus, I do military chaplaincy, right? And this is actually something that a lot of people in the military struggle with when people die, right? If you've ever read the book All Quiet on the Western Front, the main character ends up lying to one of his friend's moms. His friend dies, and he lies to her, and tells her that he died honorably or whatever, even though he was just killed very ingloriously. If you ever seen the series Band of Brothers, one of the characters who's a lieutenant struggles writing a letter back home to the parents about their sons who died because they all died in a training accident, right? The plane malfunctioned and died. How do you write back to parents and tell them, your sons died bravely when they didn't even die in combat and it was a complete fluke, right? But people in the military run into this because they want to comfort the bereaved, but they also know that isn't the truth, right? And so I think it comes down to situational things. I think most people, when they tell their children about Santa Claus, have no intention of misleading their children in any sort of sinful way. And I do believe that intention much of the time matters. I think it's usually to bring joy. I actually think that in much of the ways, it's actually quite selfless sometimes, because it could be easier just to say, oh yeah, your mom and dad bought these presents for you. You should be thankful to us, right? Rather than thankful to this other person that's out there. And you can definitely use that as a teaching moment when it comes time to tell your kids the truth about Santa, being like, just like Santa gave you gifts unconditionally, or we give you gifts through Santa unconditionally, that's how Jesus gives to us, right? That's how God gives to us. He gives it to us unconditionally. It's a good way of thinking about that, maybe. I think each family is different. I actually did a little research for this. I was reading some stories, and some people get really broken up when they found out that Santa isn't real. And I think if you're leading your kids towards that, then it might be time to prep them a little bit to pull back on how much they're putting their trust in Santa Claus. When I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real, I don't even remember when that happened. So it was like it wasn't that traumatic for me. So it might be more important to just kind of make sure that you're gatekeeping properly, so that you set your kids up for a time when they are revealed. Again, this is something that each family does differently, and so I kind of leave it up to the parents in a lot of these places. But you always have to be careful with how you teach your kids these things, and to make sure that they never lose the main focus. So that's a really good question. I appreciate it. I'll answer your third one next week. For everyone else, and Bill too, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all on Monday for our next Theolog. For those of you who are able to go to the CPC Sunday night service, then you should, to go worship with everyone. And remember that we're worshiping online at 10:30 with the Presbytery Sunday morning. So I will, not the second one, but in the morning, I'll be there with you all. And I look forward to worshiping with you. So everyone have a wonderful weekend, and see you when I see you. Peace out.